Hello, hello, hello. Thank you for joining me for another Sunday Afternoons with Reverend Lucretia. I'm so glad you're here. And if this is your first time joining this station, welcome. I'm glad that you find this. I hope that you find it inspiring and uplifting and educational and that it gives you hope. So, the name of today's talk is There is Magic in Doing Nothing, and the song is Let It Be by the Beatles. If you'd like to listen to the song before you hear the talk, just go ahead and click on the link. It will be down below in the description. So we're going to be talking about what if you could change the world by doing nothing, by being more compassionate, having a mind that is sharper and a heart that is softer. And we'll be talking about what your brain does when you're doing nothing. The fact is your brain never, ever, ever shuts down or turns off. So we'll be talking about that. We'll be talking about understanding the power of meditation. We will be comparing Eastern meditation to Christian Western meditation, and we will be talking about the metaphysical interpretation of all that, as well as having scriptural references. We are going to be understanding the need for quiet communion with God so that we can be more loving, serene, and helpful to each other. So we're going to start off with a talk called What If You Could Change the World by Doing Nothing? And it's written by Susan Piver. So she is a Buddhist meditation facilitator, teacher. She is also a New York Times best-selling author. She has 7 books that she has written. She writes on mindfulness, communication, and relationships. She says, I don't know how I became a Buddhist teacher. I was a terrible student. There's nothing in my Judeo-Christian background that would have led me in that direction. She says she worked as a waitress, as a taxi driver, and as a bartender in Austin. She said she liked that job the best. But she found herself wandering around in a state of confusion. And she was asking herself, who am I? And she, somewhere along the line, came to the place where she thought it might be a good idea to do some meditation to find that answer. So she was taught by a student of the Tibetan master Chogyam Trungpa. She had read some of his books, and so that's how she found the person that was to be her teacher, and she was very excited about the learning. And she went to him and she said, how do I do this thing? I don't know how to meditate. And he said that you place your attention on your breath. You allow the thoughts to be exactly as they are. You don't try to clear your mind of thought or stop thinking. That's ridiculous. You can't actually ever stop thinking. You just let them be as they are. And when you become distracted, you let go. Come back to your breath. So he suggested that we sit for an hour, and I said, I've never done this before. I can't possibly sit for an hour. And he said, all right, well, you're not doing nothing, but you can sit for 45 minutes. Let's try that. So it worked out very well. She decided that she wanted to make this a part of her life, and she asked him to help her set up a meditation practice, which he did. And so she started to notice pretty quickly that things were changing. She said, I wasn't becoming all Zen, but my mind was becoming sharper. My heart was becoming softer, and I was starting to notice the magic of this world. I would look at that friggin' tree and say, look how graceful those branches are. Or look at someone's shirt and say, look at that blue, look how intense it is. She said, I started feeling and seeing so much more. I kept on doing it. I didn't go on retreats or take classes. It was a very personal experience for me. She did it on her own for 10 years. She then, what she said, stumbled into a massive professional success. One of the books that she wrote about questions that you should ask before you get married started to be a bestseller. It started to sell like hotcakes. She said 100,000 copies. She was asked to be on the Oprah show, and she did, and everything just started to spiral. She had several publishers that were coming to her with lots of money, asking her to write a book for them, and she became a little bit nervous, a little bit scared, and she said, what if the next book that I wrote tanked? People magazine started using her as a relationship expert, and she said she started to be upset and afraid, and she said, what if I start to actually believe all of this hype? So she knew what she needed to do was to deepen her practice, to remember what was really important. So she went on a month-long retreat. She started studying and taking classes, and the next year she went on a 2-month-long retreat, and then she went to a Buddhist seminary. She started studying in the Shambhala tradition. She got her own teacher, so this had all been going on now for 15 years that she was studying and was going on retreats and seminaries, and she became eligible to try to become a meditation instructor. And she wanted to do that because she said she noticed that no one actually teaches how our minds work. What makes our minds sharper, our hearts softer, and creates a connection to our own personal magic. So she enrolled in the program. There were 30 people in the program, 29 of them passed, and she was not one of them. But she said that they saw something in her and they said, well, if you do 6 months of remedial work, you can try again. And indeed she did, and she passed, and so she was able to start teaching meditation. She started to do retreats, and she started to make 10-minute guided videos. She also started to do a short talk before she did the meditation, and she started the Open Heart Project, which now has over 20,000 people worldwide. And all of the people said it made their minds sharper, it made their hearts softer, and they were able to connect to the magic of their own path. So how could it be? She said there are 3 qualities, and they are all in the instructions that you are given when you try to do meditation. The first is place your attention on your breath. Everything that is not breath is not the point. Cultivate the quality called precision, one-pointedness. Hold our minds, being able to focus and sustain our own attention. Second is openness. Allow your thoughts to be as they are. Raise the quality of gentleness towards ourselves. It's not the way we usually are. We can learn to soften, first to ourselves and then to others, and then discover the truth of compassion. And third is when you notice you are becoming distracted, let go. She says this is the secret sauce you see as you practice. There is nothing to hold on to. No thought, no body, no entity that does not arise, abide, and dissolve. Even your moods, they all come and they all go. She says, let go of the armor of your opinions and your ideas. Know that as you practice meditation, your mind will become sharper, your heart will become softer, and the magic of your unique world, your destiny, will become more apparent. And at the same time, you will just be sitting there doing nothing. I just love that talk. So I wanted, you know me, I'm a geeky person and I like to go into the science of it all. And so I found some science about the brain and understanding that the brain never does stop. Because, you know, in all of the meditation books, they talk about quieting your mind and slowing your mind down and trying to not have any thoughts. There's no such thing as not having any thoughts. So in an article, What Your Brain Does When You're Doing Nothing, written by Marcus Rakel, he is a neuroscientist and a professor of radiology, neurology, neurobiology, and biomedical engineering at the Washington University in St. Louis. And he says emphatically, no, your brain never shuts off. People talk about turning it on and off, but it never goes into a dormant state. Among all of the organs of the body, it continuously uses the most energy. The other organs can have bursts of energies, but can go to zero. The brain oscillates between 95 to 100%. It is only 2% of the body's weight, but it consumes 20% of the energy in adults. In children, it consumes twice that much energy because they're just being born and learning how to form new ideas and learn new things. When the imaging was developed to be able to look at the brain, they were able to compare what the brain looks like when you're doing something as opposed to when you're doing nothing. The parts of the brain that come online when you're doing nothing are called the default mode network. All of the systems, the somata, the motor systems, the visual, auditory, and basal ganglia are all continuously working. You can lay out a map of the brain, the structure of the brain in man, in animals, monkeys, dogs, cats, rats, and they all have the same general default mode network, which is always working and never stops. He says when you're doing nothing, your brain is actually in the prediction business. It has a built-in model of the world, and it applies that to understanding what we see and hear and touch. Our view of the world is an illusion. Most of what we see in the world is being constructed by our brains because only a very small amount of the data that actually gets through your eyes and into your visual cortex is a fraction of what's actually out there. So, the brain, therefore, is in the prediction business. How would you ever get out of bed and get dressed if your brain hadn't already programmed all of that? You're not thinking of the detailed muscles and how you're moving. It's all been laid out by the brain. The organization of the brain is ongoing, intrinsic, and non-conscious. It is a phenomenal piece of the human body which never stops working and is so far beyond our comprehension. And it was given to us by God, something that we will never, ever be able to fully comprehend. So we're going to talk about the power of meditation. We're going to get back to meditation and being in the silence, being in the stillness. This is written by Kate Sokol, which is from brainfacts.org. Again, a little bit more of the medical point of view. Talking about meditation, it is a heightened state of awareness and focused attention, which can relieve stress, manage anxiety, reduce inflammation, and improve memory and attention. Doctors actually prescribe it as an antidepressant and as a blood pressure medication. Bin He, who is a neuroengineer at the Carnegie Mellon Institute, has studied the brain of Tibetan monks. He studied monks that had an average of 15 years that they'd been doing meditation, somewhere between 5 and 35 years. And he noticed that there was decreased activity in the default network, that brain at rest that we were just talking about. The longer the monk practices, the bigger the reduction in brain activity. You don't have to consume as much energy when it is at rest. You can more easily get yourself into a relaxed state and optimize how your brain uses all of its resources. They also found increased levels of myelin, which is the brain insulation, after just a few weeks of regular meditation. There is improved connectivity. Different brain regions are able to communicate faster and more efficiently with each other, and there is improved attention to different tasks. Participants improved on tasks measuring attention and problem solving in as little as 5 days. There is also a reduction in cortisol, which is the hormone that measures a person's stress level. Richard Davidson, who is the founder of the Center for Healthy Mind, says there is strong evidence that regular, consistent meditative practice gives direct benefits to the brain, psychological, and emotional well-being. Think of it as a form of personal mental hygiene, almost like toothbrushing. Humans didn't evolve brushing their teeth twice a day. It's a learned skill. Your brain is just as precious as your teeth. I frankly think it's much more precious than your teeth. Take time to learn a practice and to stick to it. So we're going to go look into scripture, what they say about be still and being quiet. Psalm 46:10, be still and know that I am God. Psalm 4:4, meditate within your heart on your bed and be still. Mark 4:39, then he arose and rebuked the wind and said to the sea, peace, be still. And the wind ceased, and there was great calm. Psalm 131:2, surely I have calmed and quieted my soul. Like a weaned child with his mother, like a weaned child is my soul within me. Isaiah 30:15, for thus saith the Lord God, the Holy One of Israel, in returning and rest you shall be saved. In quietness and confidence shall be your strength. Zephaniah 3:17, the Lord your God in your midst, the mighty one will save you. He will rejoice over you with gladness. He will quiet you with his love. I just love that. 1 Peter 3:4, let it be the hidden person of the heart with the incorruptible beauty of a gentle and quiet spirit, which is very precious in the sight of God. So metaphysically, stillness is a mental state of infinite peace, rest, and tranquility, where man's senses are hushed and he abides in God. Be still and know that I am God. That's 46:10 of Psalms. A state of consciousness entered into for the purpose of putting man in touch with the divine man, so that the soul may listen to the still small voice. That's 1 Kings 19:12. When one goes into silence, he enters into the secret place of the Most High, the closet of prayer within. He closes that door, and in the stillness of that meeting place, he prays to God, he communes with God, and he meditates on truth. Then he listens to what God has to say to him. Ed Rabel, one of the teachers of unity that I refer to all the time, says, all the power has its birth in silence. Silence and stillness are the matrix out of which comes all needed good. The Bible emphasizes this fact. It is a theme that runs through all of Jesus' teachings. The abode of pure power is in silence. The abode of pure strength is in stillness. Fillmore says, by quieting the mental man, by passing through the discipline of intellectual silence, man arrives at the threshold of God's workshop. As he passes into the inner chamber, he finds himself entering the Holy of Holies. God works in the stillness. James Dillett Freeman says the silence is a holy place, a place of stillness and peace. It is right where you are whenever you shut the door of your senses, still the importuning of your thoughts, and turn to God. Let your whole body, every nerve, every muscle, every cell, relax and let go. Be still and know that I am God. Say this silently until the words take on a new meaning, and you feel the stillness with your whole mind and your whole being. In the stillness, when your thoughts and feelings are quieted, doors of your senses are shut, you feel your unity with God. Out of the stillness comes the still small voice, that voice of God which speaks as an inner knowing and carries to your listening heart the assurance that all is well. So you hear me talk about May Rowland all the time. She was a very big influencer in the silent unity. She taught people how to work in silent unity, and she wrote what's called a drill in silence. And she talks about different parts of the body that you can give commands to, and she talks about the need, before you go into the silence, to do affirmations, to focus your mind. Be still in the silence, prepare so that you can unite with God instantly and meet any need that might arise. There is a place to which you can turn for rest and release from fear and care. It is a holy place. The stillness fills it. The peace of God is in it. This place is neither far away nor difficult to enter. It is right where you are now. It is right where you are whenever you shut the door of the senses and go with God. It is the place of silence. It is not a state of daydreaming or sleep. It is your appointment with God. Relax and let go. Relax in your body and be receptive in your mind. Underneath are the everlasting arms. That's Deuteronomy 33:27. Be still and know that I am God. Say this silently. Repeat this until you feel the stillness in your whole mind. In the stillness, you unify yourself with God. When your thoughts and feelings are quieted and the doors of your senses are shut. So a little bit of difference between Eastern and Western meditation. In Eastern meditation, they talk a lot about focusing on your breath and a lot about being absolutely 100% silent. In the New Thought movement, they talk about meditation as silence as well, but a lot of teachers say that you should start it with affirmations so that you can focus your mind and that you bring yourself back to those words, those affirmations over and over. So you find it wise to use affirmations. They will direct and control your thoughts. I am the light of the world. Be still until you find the light of spirit flowing through you and over you. Declare, I am divine intelligence. Emerson said, the only real prosperity that I can have is a rush of ideas. Divine mind is a reservoir of ideas, good ideas, which are yours to draw upon. Say, I see with the eyes of spirit, and you see only the perfection of God. All sense of tension or fatigue is dropping away before the inflow of divine energy. Say, all power is given unto me in my mind and body. The power of God is working through me to free you from every negative influence. You are the overcomer, for you are a child of God. Say, I am the perfect expression of divine love. Love transforms. Love transfigures. Love fills the heart with harmony. Whatever the need or problem, divine love is the answer. Now, out of the stillness comes the still small voice, that voice of God which speaks as the inner knowing, a strong conviction, and carries the listening heart to the assurance that all is well. Deep is the silence of the place of peace within you. Deep is the silence where you commune with God. There you know God as a living presence and yourself as God's child. So here's what I know. I've been meditating for 39 years. I can't believe that. It's hard for me to even say it. It'll be 40 years in 2023. I really started just due to a need to talk to God. So it wasn't really meditation as much as it was me going into a quiet place. Actually, it was almost always the bathroom, and closing the door and getting on my knees. That's what comes naturally to me, and just talking to God. And then I would sit and I would wait for answers. I was a child, I was 9 years old, so there was a little bit of pleading, please help me, please help me. There was some of that. I will say I've grown out of that as I've learned to think about it differently. But mainly it was a tool for self-preservation. It was what kept me sane. And I remember being 9 years old, the first time that I started doing that. I needed to talk back to that voice in my head. So as I grow older and I took on more responsibilities, I realized that I still needed quiet time, but sometimes I would hear this voice just said, just please God, just let me stare out the window. And what I found was that sometimes I just needed silence. I wasn't talking to God. I wasn't asking for anything. I wasn't even particularly listening for answers. I was just looking out the window. Please, I just need to stare out the window for a while, is what I heard. And so I started to do that. I will talk a little bit more about that. But I remember when I was really young, I can't remember how old I was. My mom came into my room. It was a Saturday morning and I was sleeping, and she said, get out of bed, you're just being lazy. And I reflected on that later and now as I understand that our culture has this ingrained message that we are not enough and that we constantly need to be doing something, to not be lazy, to prove our worthiness by our achievements. I looked at the difference between being and doing. There is a phrase that is popular that we hear all the time: you are a human being, not a human doing. But that really goes against the grain of everything that we're taught. As I said, I was taught very, very young not to be lazy, and we're all taught that we have to work hard and we have to accomplish. So as a way of getting away from all that, I came into this practice of doing nothing. Different types of doing nothing. Staring out the window is one of them. Quieting the voices in my mind, just looking around, seeing the world. I find that all to be greatly healing and of great value to me. And a lot of it is also about listening to the outside, listening to the birds chirp, listening to the cars pass, listening to my kitties running around. So it really is about getting very still. I don't know that you would actually call it meditation, but it's one of my forms of doing nothing. So this week, as you know, I started a new job. And when I would come home, I had the voice that said, please just let me stare out the window. And what I understand was that my brain was actually processing a whole lot of new information. I was commuting to a different town, and so I was traveling, and that was different for me. And I was dealing with people that were in a great deal of distress. And so I wanted to be able to be my best self when I was there. But when I came home, I found the need to just stare out the window. So I've been doing that and allowing myself to just do that. But also I do formal meditation. So the formal meditation is the talking to God part and waiting for answers part, and focusing on not thinking. And so what's worked for me, I haven't been able to do the breath thing as well. Although I've tried to focus on my breathing, I find myself trying to change the pace of my breathing, and it becomes actually disruptive more than it is calming, because I'm trying to breathe more slowly or breathe faster or to count my breaths. So what I did find works for me is Esther Hicks talks a lot about listening to the sounds, that you just sit in a chair, and she talks about hearing the air conditioning go on and off, and listening to the birds, and listening to those sounds is my best way of being totally silent. That's the communing with God part. I love old churches. I've always loved that. When I was younger in New York City, I used to go to St. John the Divine. It was my absolute favorite place to go. And I haven't found any churches out here where I really feel, dark and quiet with the stained glass windows. I haven't found that so much. But I understand the place is just the icing on the cake. The real place to meet God is inside, after the mantra that I use, thank you, thank you. Thank you. Sometimes those mantras really help to just get me centered, and sometimes I use the mantra, I trust you. And so sometimes before I go into the silence, I start with a mantra, and that gets me settled down and relaxed. I believe that there is healing that only comes from the silence. It only comes from the stillness, from doing nothing. I believe not only my well-being, but my survival depends on it. I believe I am a better person, I am more relaxed, I am more open-hearted, and more able to be of service to God. I believe that doing nothing is the answer. I believe there is magic in doing nothing. And so it is. Remember, at all times, the power is in you. It always has been, and it always will be. I look forward to hearing your comments on how you sit and do nothing, and how it is helpful for you. I send you on your way with many blessings.